So, in the spirit of Halloween, I wanted to talk about the right horror film today, and I decided to try the horror-themed streaming service Shudder with my friends Shay, Denzel, and Martha. In search of a horror film that none of us had seen before, we instead ended up arriving at an unintentional comedy.
Ho 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 ho! Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jukebox Harry, and today we're going to be looking at a horror film which really can't decide which movie it wants to be derivative of. Tourist Trap is a 1979 supernatural slasher film directed by David Schmoeller, the creator behind such movies as The Seduction, Crawl Space, and The Puppet Master. I didn't like any of those movies. Tourist Trap is based on the director's University of Texas thesis film The Spider Will Kill You, and even though it drifted into obscurity shortly after it was released, it did attain a cult following later on, after being praised by notorious horror author Stephen King in his non-fiction book Danse Macabre. Now, I had never heard of this movie before, none of us actually had, so we went in completely blind. And I gotta say, I enjoyed watching this movie, but probably not for all the reasons that the director intended. This doesn't feel like the soundtrack for a horror film, it feels more like we're watching some kind of 1930s slapstick comedy. Now, the soundtrack is a really good aspect of the film, and it does become more horror-based later on, but this gives you a misleading first impression. Although, since you are in for a kind of campy comedy film, I guess it's appropriate. Then we see a random guy named Woody rolling a tire across the road.
Damn.
And that is about as much characterization as you'll get out of him or nearly any other character in the film, so brace yourself. Woody has gone to seek help for a flat tire.
Look at the size of that hole.
Title of your sex tape.
Woody stumbles across a desolate gas station but finds nobody. He searches a back room for assistance but finds himself surprised.
Ma'am.
And things begin to get really suspicious. We have all kinds of strange things happening here until he tries to break free by prying a hole in the door, even though there's a broken window that he could easily escape through. Objects begin to inexplicably fly at him from a cabinet as the mannequins around him continue to laugh until finally a metal rod lifts itself up and flies right into him. So I guess going for that broken window is probably looking like a good idea about now, hey Woody? You know, I do have to say, there is no telling what to expect from the movie after this. It actually does give a pretty frightening start with all the strange elements it combines in this scene. It sets Tourist Trap up to be a pretty solid movie. We spot Woody's friends driving in a different car.
These tourist traps are all alike.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
Then the car suddenly comes to a stop.
What's the matter?
I don't know, man.
Oh no, we can't continue driving, not with a broken headlight in the daytime. The girls wander off and find an oasis.
And you thought this was a cheap tourist trap.
Yeah, there it is, there it is.
We can't go swimming anyway.
Why not?
We didn't bring our bathing suits.
Who needs a bathing suit?
If the underwhelming performances fail to convey to you who the prude in this group is, and therefore who is most likely to survive in this film, then the costumes should definitely give it away. In comes the rifleman himself, played by Chuck Connors.
Howdy.
For the record, Chuck Connors is an actor most famous for playing the titular role on the Western TV series The Rifleman, and this film has no shame in milking it for all it can. One wholesome anecdote about this scene is that the director refused to pressure his cast into actual nudity. He asked if they were comfortable, they said no, and that was the end of it. So whatever you end up thinking of this film, at least the director is a man of virtue, and you gotta give him props for that.
I don't get too many visitors no more. Seems most folks use that new highway. I guess they figure it's gonna get them to where they're going fast.
Yes, I believe that's what a highway is for.
Our friend got lost.
A friend?
Oh, friend! Oh, new friend! Oh, friend! Please be my friend! Oh, friend! Oh, friend!
Their car broke down.
This friend of yours, she a girl too?
No, he's a he.
Dialogue?
There's not a place like this in the whole world.
I'm pretty sure there are other roadside bodies of water in the world there, cowboy. The girls wander off with perfectly dry hair, and the rifleman offers to help their situation.
Why don't you kids hop aboard and we'll drop by the house with my tools.
They drive off to his museum, which is going out of business.
See, my wife passed away just after they finished the highway. And all I got left is this junk and my memories.
Dr. Pepper also gets some advertisement in this film.
Fun for video.
Hell, I was kicked out of the Navy when I was 19, kicked in the head when I was 20, and kicked into jail when I was 21.
It certainly sounds suspicious.
These are so lifelike.
Yeah, my brother got pretty good at making those figures.
Your brother made these?
Watch this. Used to scare the hell out of kids and Yankee tourists.
Yeah, I would probably be pretty frightened too if a statue decided to fire an actual gun at me, even if it was loaded with blanks. Geez, no wonder you're going out of business. Out of the blue, it's also suddenly become nighttime.
Who lives over there?
Just Davy.
Who's Davy?
What, Davy Crockett? Who else?
Oh, of course, how could they not have guessed? The girls stay put while Jerry and the rifleman go to sort out his car.
Can I use your phone?
Oh, sure, help yourself. But it doesn't work. I got nobody to call.
What a strange person.
Oh, if you're thinking about wandering around outside, I wouldn't if I were you.
Eileen refuses to follow his one simple rule and goes to investigate the empty house, where she finds a collection of lifelike mannequins, some of which actually have moving eyes. And in comes the strangely masked man. Okay, so our villain apparently has telekinetic abilities? We get a low-budget kink-themed death as Eileen is strangled to death by her neckerchief. So apparently we're watching a slasher film where the killer has all the powers from Carrie. That doesn't sound like a sensible combination.
We, didn't hear your truck.
That's 'cause Jerry took it to town. I walked up. Hell, we couldn't fix that Jeep of his. Where's that other girl?
She went outside.
I'll bet she's snooping around out back.
He goes into the house and finds that Eileen has been turned into a mannequin.
We've been getting a tremendous response to your TR6 mannequin.
TR6? I prefer to think of her as Elaine.
Meanwhile, the girls stumble across his photo album and discover pictures of his deceased wife, who looks exactly like one of the mannequins.
I loved her very much.
Where's Eileen?
Probably went back down to the Jeep.
What are you doing?
I'm going to find her.
With a gun?
All right, without a gun.
I really, for the life of me, could not figure out what the hell was going on with this moment right here, but it actually did have me laughing out loud.
Can we go with you?
It's best you ladies stay put right here.
No, I don't think that's going to be happening.
Naturally, they go wandering themselves, and Becky decides to climb into the building while Molly goes back to the museum. And she finds the collection of mannequins.
Eileen? Eileen?
Come on, Eileen! Lifted straight out of Psycho. Paranormal things begin to occur before the mannequins all fall on Becky and the killer accosts her.
Need a hand?
That's handiwork.
Then the mannequins begin to shake and fall on top of her as a group of them stand in a circle around her. Then we cut to the basement where there is a loud dripping sound. Pretty much every time we're in the basement with this movie, that sound just lingers for no reason. It actually is just really fucking annoying. The killer brings Becky downstairs where there's another stray woman tied up.
I brought you a visitor. You're so pretty.
No, please, not again.
Why don't you like me?
Are you seriously asking?
And Jerry's tied up down there too.
Who is he?
It's Lawson's crazy brother.
We are going to have a party.
Sounds like a terrible party.
How do I look, huh? How do I look?
You look like shit to me.
Drink.
Hey, settle down, Bill Cosby.
The party's over.
That was fast.
The killer covers this girl's face in plaster.
It's funny about plaster. As it starts to dry, gets very hot, almost burning the skin.
That's not funny. Jesus Christ!
You won't be able to breathe, but you won't suffocate. Your heart will burst from fright before you lose consciousness.
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
She's as dead as disco.
If you really thought saying that was gonna work, why didn't you say it a little bit earlier?
Pretty good trick, huh? My brother doesn't like me to do that stuff. He pretends he doesn't even know about my power. But it feels good when I use it. I shouldn't have to hide it. I mean, I can control it, I can.
Yeah, why do you have those powers, and why do you only use them for very tenuous tasks?
A good question. For another time.
Sometimes I really don't know what I'm doing.
I believe that.
Molly comes searching again.
See my friend? Wait, little girl.
Y'all run like scared little rabbits.
Little girl.
Run, rabbit!
And this entire chase scene gets really drawn out, even if it does have some moments.
See my friend?
Molly eventually finds the rifleman.
He's trying to kill me.
He was chasing you, and he was probably going to kill you if he caught you, but he definitely did not try to kill you.
He was wearing some kind of mask.
That man was my brother.
The rifleman gives Molly a gun and goes searching for his brother.
I don't know how to shoot.
What kind of American are you?
The killer emerges and Molly opens fire on him.
Thanks. Dum dum, you're dead. Dum dum, you're dead.
I have to admit, I did not see this twist coming. I mean, the signs were there, and some of my friends were able to see it, but I did not. So, David Schmoeller, well done. Molly runs again and backs into the oasis before the rifleman inexplicably pops up behind her and dunks her into the water. I know he has telekinesis, but it is not physically possible that he should have been able to get there in time. Then he's eating dinner with one of the mannequins.
You want some crackers?
I'd like some more crackers, please.
That's what I said.
Yes, the crackers are very good.
Are the crackers good?
He is so eccentric.
Oh, I got to fix that.
So why didn't you use your telekinetic powers to put the head back on then, mate? Jerry and Becky manage to break free, but they get found.
Jump! He can jump!
And after he exits from one side of the house, somehow the killer exits from the other, even though he was right behind him a second ago.
That does not make sense.
Becky runs too, giving us another tedious chase scene, which leads to Becky being found by the rifleman. He brings her to the house and starts attacking her with his weaponized mannequins, who aren't firing blanks this time. She manages to avoid all of the gunfire, but gets killed by a Native American. Because remember, those are our real enemies. And despite being apparently drowned, Molly wakes up with completely dry hair in a bed. She then gets randomly carried to another room where a bunch of mannequins howl at her. It's never explained why she's here, and then she gets carried to yet another room.
Isn't my wife pretty?
Things get really uncomfortable here as he makes out with her as she wears the mask of his deceased wife, which of course she rejects, and finally things begin to get explained to us.
I killed the both of them. Her and my brother. They were whoring behind my back.
The worst little whorehouse in Texas.
That's what the law says. A man finds his wife cheating on him. He's got a legal right to kill them both.
And I can see clearly you know nothing about the law. It seems like you have a tenuous grasp on the English language in general.
This scene is where the film Psycho references come full circle. A man kills a woman out of jealousy, then preserves her body and also becomes the person he's killed. But it still doesn't do anything to explain his magic powers. Jerry busts in to try and help Molly, but surprise, he's just a mannequin too. Although if the killer can make mannequins that look this convincing, it doesn't explain why the rest don't look nearly as real. The rifleman begins to bring the other mannequins to life around him, and they all begin to laugh maniacally. And while dancing with his wife, Molly swings an axe into his spine, killing him. And now completely insane, she drives off with the mannequins of her friends as the film comes to a conclusion. Except that the car, which wasn't working at the start, suddenly is now. So I guess he actually did get it fixed, or the writers just didn't think that through. And in the credits, you'll also spot the name of Ron Underwood as the first assistant director. This is the man who directed Tremors and the Academy Award-winning City Slickers, as well as The Adventures of Pluto Nash, which is internationally considered one of the worst films of all time. Anyway, is Tourist Trap a good film?
Well, not exactly.
Tourist Trap was a strange experience. It was definitely one that I enjoyed watching, but I definitely feel like it didn't all come together. David Schmoeller contributes some promising direction to the film. He shows the ability to frame shots and use practical effects very well as building an effectively spooky atmosphere, thanks largely to the work of an awesome musical score. This is all apparent as early as the film's intro scene, and he manages to achieve this without ever showing all that much blood in the film, so the movie managed to get away with a PG rating, a pretty rare occurrence for a slasher film. Although at the same time, the director feels like this actually hurt the movie's potential success at box office. Unfortunately though, Schmoeller fails to find the same success when it comes to actually writing the film. The narrative is formulaic, the characters are predictably thin, minus the killer, none of the performances are particularly transcendent, and the whole experience is highly derivative. Originally, my friends and I were hoping to find the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Shudder, and in a sense we kind of did in Tourist Trap because a lot of this movie actually borrows from that film. Similarly, Tourist Trap follows a group of young Americans taking a road trip who end up finding themselves being stalked by a masked killer inside a desolate back road house. And the killer's obsession with masks can also be seen as a reference to Halloween, the movie which established the slasher genre as a bankable movie genre. But the characters' motivations are most obviously taken from Psycho. And interestingly enough, both Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre took influence from serial killer Ed Gein, so here is another movie which takes influence from him. And the decision to preserve the characters' bodies through statues is obviously influenced from House of Wax, but the characters' telekinetic abilities, now that is obviously banking on the success of the 1976 horror film Carrie, an adaptation of Stephen King's novel, which interestingly enough, Stephen King is actually one of the biggest fans of this movie, so there's a kind of twist of fate going on. Unfortunately, it's ridiculously out of place in this movie. The killer's abilities make no sense, and there is never any explanation to even try to make sense of it. The original script called for the mannequins to be haunted by the spirits of those who were killed, and that would have been so much better. And the fact that this film didn't stick with that is a major detriment. But even when you strip away the derivative elements of the story, as a whole, Tourist Trap still doesn't stand too strong simply as an objective film. It starts with promise and intensity, and both the villain and the use of live mannequins add interesting horror elements to the story. But after the initial gimmicks of the story wear off, it becomes really repetitive and incredibly slow. Despite being only 90 minutes in length, the second half of the film felt like it honestly went on forever, and it became a chore just to get to the end. And this meant the reveal of the villain as a psycho-influenced character came off as far less impressive thanks to its derivative nature. Between the halfway mark and about the last 10 minutes of the film, it feels like Tourist Trap just gives itself up to the pitfalls of slasher film conventions without enough atmosphere or originality to rise above its generic nature and slow pace. And the fact that in the end the killer's superpowers are unexplained and pretty damn irrelevant just make the whole plot point feel like a tacky gimmick. This was the director's feature-length debut, so it's understandable that David Schmoeller is still figuring out certain humps that he needs to get over as a filmmaker. Unfortunately, I have to say that I don't really see him getting much better as a filmmaker as he went on. I didn't enjoy any of his other movies, and none of them still managed to come close to the quality of Tourist Trap. I will say that this movie was a better combination of slasher film tropes and a telekinetic character than Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, but still, it was just too much of a messy experience. Tourist Trap gets 4 ridiculous masked killers out of 10. It's occasionally frightening and more often hilarious in a way that it probably did not intend, but unfortunately, director David Schmoeller's direction gets undone by its messy story, slow pace, and the constant comparisons to way better films that influenced it. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish, you guys. If there are any movies you want to see me discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. If you want to see more episodes of this show, please hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, until next time, I have been your host, Jukebox Harry. Happy Halloween.